So good afternoon, everyone. A very warm welcome to everyone joining us from across the globe and connecting with us today on your Sunday. Y'all are joining our global cultural jamboree, which is organized by Sri Lanka Scouts, and we're so happy to have you all here. My name is Suhela, and I'm from UN Volunteers Sri Lanka, and today I will be moderating your session. I hope you all had a great time these past 2 days that we had. We launched on Friday, and today's our final day. And I hope you all enjoyed all the sessions we conducted so far, and you all have some interesting thoughts. So I want to welcome you guys to coming to our Community Volunteer Center, which is powered by UN volunteers in collaboration with many other UN agencies that have partnered with us over the past 3 days. It's lovely to see so many people joining, and I can see that the numbers are increasing as we go. And y'all are in for a really good session today. So let me take you through what we've done so far. So on Friday, we launched our first session where we connected and discussed about volunteering in the decade of action and how it is important to understand what design thinking is like to help scouts enhance their knowledge and work as a community. And yesterday we had 3 sessions in partner with UNDP, WHO, and WHO. In the morning, we had 2 sessions, one with WHO, where we discussed what it was like for well-being in sustainable consumption. And in the afternoon, we had a session with UNDP where we discussed climate change and how it is important to value the environment that we live in at the moment. And finally, in the night, we had our final session for the day yesterday, which was based on diversity, inclusion, and peace with UNDP. And today, we are on our final day for our final 3 sessions. So before I get into the details of our session that we are conducting today, I would like to take you all through how you all can actually participate with us today and be interactive with us, because we are here to make sure that you guys will always be on board with us while we are conducting our session. So let me just share my screen with you all so that you all can take a look at what I'm going to take you all through. So if you guys have logged on to our global cultural jamboree site, you'll need to go to the community center, which is at the bottom, which is hosted by us. And here you guys will see that we have all 5 sessions, the webinar links and the YouTube link for y'all to join. So how y'all can actually join on board for our session today is by clicking this Community Volunteer Center link that is here. And that will take you straight to our Google site where you guys can actually join us, and it will continue further down where you can click the link that is shared here, or you can scan the QR code, because today our session is going to be extremely interactive. So click webinar 5 because we are on webinar 5 today. And once you get to webinar 5, you will connect with us with the QR code at the bottom here. So just click here to ensure that you enter the activity, and then or scan the QR code wherever you all are from. And today we are partnering with UN Women, and we are going to have an interesting session today where we will be discussing the importance of gender empowerment and gender equality, because that is one of the key most important things that are present in our society today. And it will be conducted by 2 very interesting people. One is Esther and the other is Avanti. Let me introduce my panel today. Esther is the Gender Coordination Officer for UN Women, and Avanti is the Project Officer for Peace Building. And today they will have a very warm session with you guys where you all will be able to hear your own opinions on gender empowerment. So Esther, over to you.
Thanks so much, Suhela. It's great to be here with all of you. As Suhela mentioned, we're from UN Women, and UN Women focuses its work on gender equality and women's empowerment. So we're really excited to be able to talk about that with you today. I hope you've been having a lovely time over the past 3 days. And I hope, and I'm really glad that you're here joining in this session with us. As Suhela mentioned, we're here to talk about gender equality. And I mean, gender equality is a big phrase, right? And we say it a lot, but sometimes it's hard to think through what it means. Whoever you are, it's always something, there's always something to learn, there's always something to think through. And so what Avanti and I are going to be doing today is unpacking a little bit of what gender is, what gender equality is. what we mean when we say we want to bring it about, what we can do about it, what you can do about it. And that's what the discussion is going to shape up to be. Please, we are hoping to take questions at the end of the session. So if you do have questions as we go, just make a note of them and we will try and get to them at the end of the session. Right, definitions. It's always good to start off with definitions when we're talking about things. And I think, when we say gender, we think it's a very simple definition. We say there's boy and there's girl, there's man and woman, that's it. But it's actually more than that. And it's something that we all still continue to learn. And I just want to lay it out a bit. So there's two words that we often use interchangeably. We think they mean the same thing. So there's the word sex, which is often used in scientific contexts. And what we mean by sex, the definition of the word sex in relation to this is the biological, the physiological characteristics, right? And some of you might have already studied this, some of you might be about to, but there are different hormones, different chromosomes, different reproductive organs that are associated generally with being male and female. So that's what we mean when we say sex. That is a physical definition. When we say gender, what we mean is something less defined, right? It is a social construct, which means that the society around us, the people around us, the institutions around us have attributed certain opportunities, certain characteristics and relationships to being male and female. So what is often said is, if you're a male, if you're then you're a better leader, you're more aggressive. Maybe you look a certain way, you talk a certain way. Whereas if you're a female, if you're a woman, you are more nurturing, more caring. Women make better mothers. So these aren't part of who we're born as. This is what society tells us. This is what society says is being male and being female. And so when we talk about gender, we're talking about that social construct. And as soon as we understand it to be a social construct, we also see that it changes by context, right? So I'm Sri Lankan. So in Sri Lanka, what they say a man and a woman should be like might be different from what, say, someone in Finland thinks a man and a woman should be like, and might be different from what someone in Mexico thinks a man and a woman might be like. So they change with where you are, with the time you are. And again, because it's a social construct, it's changeable, it's fluid, which is why, there are people, so we call them cisgendered people, who identify with the sex they're born as. I'm cisgendered, which means my sex as my body is the body of a woman, and I also identify as a woman. But there are also people who would identify, say there are women who would identify as being a man, or men who would identify as being a woman. And they're known as transgender people. And you also have non-binary people who say, actually, I'm not going to fit into this binary. I'm outside of it. And that's all right. And that's part of this understanding that we grow into when we see that gender is a social construct. I'm not going to go into it for too much longer because it's a big thing, but I think it's something that we need to remember. And I also want to highlight that when we talk about gender equality, we're not just talking about, groups of people who identify with their sex. We mean everyone who identifies as anything on the gender spectrum. Everyone deserves equality. Right, next. Oh, we've already got a few people coming in. So the next activity is, what does gender equality mean to you? And I think you have a space to type in what you think of when you think of gender equality. We've already got lifestyle choice, free to pursue any career, equal rights. Those are amazing. Anyone else, please, do enter your thoughts on this. Freedom, that's excellent. I hope you're all able to access this. But do enter, type in what you think of gender equality. Peace, that's interesting. Peace is definitely a consequence of it. Equal rights, yeah. Anyone else? Love, that's amazing. Choose your dream, yeah. Free from others' opinions. Lifestyle choice. I'm seeing a lot of freedom. And I think that's such a key part of gender equality. right? Because it's of gender equality, because it's not being restricted, right? Choose your dream. Thanks. Yeah. Okay, those are amazing. So we're going to move on. And what we talk about is going to pull in everything that you brought up. And how I would define gender equality, I would break it up into these three things: equal rights, equal responsibilities, equal opportunities. So when I say equal rights, what do I mean? Okay, we have the big rights, right? Everyone has the right to live. Everyone has the right to not be tortured, to not be laughed at. Everyone has the right to food. Everyone has the right to a house. These are human rights, and human rights belong to everybody equally. Now we have equal responsibilities. What does that mean? Equal responsibilities is the flip side of rights, right? Which means I have the same right as anyone, and all of you have the same right as anyone to life. It also means that I have the responsibility to not take anyone else's life. That's my responsibility, right? If everyone has the right to food, it's my responsibility to make sure that I contribute to a country where people can have food. So rights always come with responsibilities, and everyone has the same. Equal opportunities. You know, I saw in one of your responses before, someone said the right to choose your career. And that's such a big part of equal opportunities, right? Because often when it comes to gender, we get told what men can do and what women can do. So women get told, you would be a good mother, a good nurse, but maybe don't be an engineer. You know, whereas men get told you would be an amazing CEO. You could be, you could be a leader. You can be the engineer, but you don't stay home and look after the children, right? But when we talk about gender equality, what we mean is everybody gets the same opportunities. If I want to be an electrical engineer, I get to do that. That's what equal opportunities means. Everybody gets to choose what they want to do. Two things that I want to follow up from that on is one, sometimes when we say equality, not just gender equality, we say racial equality, any sort of equality, people think, oh, so if you mean equal, then you mean everybody is the same. And that's not the case, right? Even within women, we're so different. I'm a Sri Lankan Tamil woman. My experience is different from, say, a Thai woman. And that's different from an Indian man. Each of us is different. So when we say equality, we're not saying everybody is the same. Everybody will, eventually become the same cookie cutter version of humanity. No, we're saying that we're different and we bring these amazing different expertise and experiences to the table, but our rights, our responsibilities, and our opportunities do not depend on our sex or our gender. Those are equal, whoever we are and whatever our different experiences are. The second thing that when we talk about gender equality is that we also recognize that in the same way that I should be free, I live in a society, we all live in a society that has structures around us. We have government structures, we have educational structures. Your school is an educational structure. Your workplace is a structure. And when we say gender equality, what we're saying is each of these structures needs to think about the fact that men and women, that any gender, that every different gender has specific needs, right? As a woman, as a Sri Lankan Tamil woman, I have different needs perhaps from my government, from my workplace, than a man in a different country or a man in the same country might have. And these institutions need to think about how can we make sure that we're looking after all of them, that nobody is getting left behind, right? All right, so that's a very quick introduction to gender equality, equal rights, responsibilities, opportunities. Now that we've had this definition, I'd like to ask you, how many of you think we have gender equality now? Do we have equal rights, responsibilities, and opportunities now? All right, we've got sort of parallel, which is very interesting. All right, we've got more of you saying no. Yeah, more of you saying no. This is very interesting because I thought a lot of you would say no, but quite a few of you are saying yes. And that's something that we can think through as we go today. Yeah. Okay, so we're seeing quite a few of you saying yes, but most of you are saying no. And I'm going to move on from here and say that actually I'd say no. And almost every global leader, every international organization, and certainly the UN's position is that we don't have gender equality now. We don't have it. And that's not, sometimes when we think about this, we think, oh, this is just about one part of the world. Maybe we'd say in South Asia, in Asia, we don't have gender equality, but maybe in the West, maybe there you do have gender equality. But the thing is that not one country in the world has achieved complete gender equality, which is a really sad thing to think about, that there is not one country in the world where every gender is treated the same. It means that in every country in the world, at some point, people will be discriminated against because of their gender. And that's what we're going to be talking about as we go. What are signs that we don't have gender equality? Because we can say, oh, there's no gender equality, and then you might come back and say, well, what do you mean by gender equality? I look around me in my house, my father and my mother are the same, my brother and I are the same. So we could say, well, from what I can see, people are, men and women are equal, all genders are equal. And so I'm going to take you through a few things, a few areas that if you look at, we see that there actually isn't equality. The first one is leadership. And I have a poll for you here to ask you. So women make up at least 50% of most countries' population, right? That means in almost every country, at least half of the people are women. I'd like you to try and have a guess at how many countries have that reflected in their cabinet of ministers. How many countries have at least 50% of women as cabinet ministers in government, which means that men and women are equally represented in leadership? All right, a lot of you are saying 14. I'm hoping it's not 14, but it might be 14. All right, quite a few of you have voted, so I'll just move on. And only 14 countries. We have roughly around 200 countries in the world. Only 14 of them have equal representation of women in cabinet, which means that in almost every other country, there are more men in cabinet than there are women. And for those of you who aren't sure, cabinet is one of the top bodies of people who make decisions about the country, who make decisions that affect all of us. And why, it's interesting always to think about why we don't have women in government. And remember, I was talking about earlier when we were talking about, what gender is, we were talking about perceptions, right? And one of the biggest perceptions about women is women don't make good leaders. And a lot of people, if you go and ask them, will say, I'd rather trust a man to run the country. And that's because we think men make better leaders. We say, oh, men are more aggressive. If you sit men around a boardroom, they will be better at deciding what's better at the country, because the women might not fight for what's important. And it's these ideas that we have, these ideas that our societies have taught us over years that tell us that women are good at this and men are good at this and women are not good at leading. So if you look at how many countries have women as presidents or prime ministers or as heads of state, very few will have women. It's still an amazing thing every time a woman gets elected, which shouldn't be the case. You look at parliaments, women are still underrepresented. You look at cabinets, women are still underrepresented. You go outside of government and you look at companies. How many companies have equal representation of women in their boardrooms? And very few of them will have it. And so that's one sign of inequality. It's, you look at places of leadership, places of power, and women will always be underrepresented. And that's something that needs to change. Another poll for you. Okay, we've got gender-based violence. Gender-based violence is when someone is subjected to violence because of their gender. And I'd like you to tell me, what's the global statistic here? How many people are subjected to physical or sexual violence in the world? Which means how many people are attacked because of their gender, and it's usually women. Okay, so most of you are saying 1 in 3, which is, so the answer is 1 in 3. And this is despite years of activism on this. The UN has done incredible work on this. Women's activists on the ground have been working on this for years, but still 1 in 3 women in the world experience physical or sexual violence. And it's usually by someone that they trust. It's someone close to them. And again, it's always interesting to think about why. What is it that makes it easier to attack women? Why do women get affected by this more? And again, it goes back to our perceptions of women, right? If a woman is told, you know, you're better off as a mother, you're better off staying at home, it means that she stays home, she doesn't have a salary, she'll often have very few friends because she's so focused on the home. And she might not know, how to go and talk to the police because someone else always goes with her. And because of these constraints, it makes women more vulnerable, which means if someone is angry, someone wants to hurt someone, it's always easier to go on the women because the woman is less likely to know how to respond. And she's also more likely to keep it inside because women are told, oh, you must be understanding and passive and loving. And so women will also try to forgive more. So it's always easier to be violent against women, which is something that needs to change because it's terrible that 1 in 3 people in the world get seriously hurt in a way that traumatizes them just because they're women or just because of their gender. And actually, all of you have been stuck in this COVID situation over the past year with us. And during COVID, we've seen that intimate partner violence, so violence against women by people who are close to them, have increased drastically, which means this is a real problem. And this is a really urgent problem. And again, it's a massive sign of inequality. Right, another poll. Legal protection. So we've seen that people are often violated. How many countries still allow for it to be legal for a man to beat his wife? So your options are 0, 20, 2, and 35. So the question is, how many countries still allow for a man to beat his wife according to their laws? All right, we're seeing a lot of 20 and 35. And the answer is 35. 35 countries still allow for men to beat their wives, which means if a woman is beaten by her husband, she cannot go to the police because the police will say, I'm sorry, that's okay. And the bigger problem here is that laws are not protecting women enough. And then you go back to the question of, well, who's making the laws? Parliament, government, and who's in government? Not enough women. And so you see, all of these things are connected. If you don't have enough women in leadership, you won't have women being sufficiently protected by their laws. And this is just one example. There are so many examples of laws on paper that continue to repress women and keep them from finding a solution to this. All right, we've got, right. We've got one more, again on legal protection of assault. What is the global average difference between a man and a woman's salary? So if you have a man and a woman doing the same job with the same experience, the same education, the same expertise, is there a difference in their salary? And what do we think the difference is? Right. Okay, so we're seeing a lot of 16% and 8.5%. And the answer to that is that there is, on average, right, a 16% difference, which means I could be doing the same job not in my job, but in a lot of places, I could be doing the same job as a man. And we could have the same degrees, the same number of years of experience, the same expertise and skills that we bring, and he will still be paid more. And that's a global trend, right? And this is an average. And I'm highlighting that because in many countries, the difference is much larger and women are paid much less than men. And that's terrible because it affects performance, it affects the economy, it affects women's drive to enter the workforce. And it's telling women, you're not as worthwhile as men are. And I think these are things that we need to remember when we think about gender equality. It's in our education systems, our governments, our schools, our workplaces. There's so much that we need to change and so much we can do. And I know Avanti is going to get to that in a bit. And before I hand over to Avanti, I just want to really quickly talk about why it's important. And I especially want to talk about why it's important for men to be involved in this. Because, we say gender equality, we say women's rights, we say, oh, women are often attacked, women suffer, women are often pushed back. And sometimes it's easy for men to say, well, okay, I get it. I'm sorry for women. But this is a women's issue, and so we will let women fight for this, and we will let women talk about this, and we will quietly support if we have to. But I want to tell you that change is important for everyone. Gender inequality affects all of us, including men. And there's three things I want to highlight. One is safety and security, and by that I mean physical safety. Everybody. All of society deserves to be safe. And if they're not, we're going to have serious problems in how we function as a society. But I'm also talking about security to be ourselves, right? Gender inequality stops us from being who we are and from enjoying who we are, right? I'm a girl, and so I get told that I'm too tall, I'm too educated, I'm too ambitious, and I argue too much. My brother, who's a boy, he gets told that he cries too much, his hair is too long, and he should be stronger and more ambitious, right? But what that means is that neither of us, not my brother and not me, neither of us can be exactly who we are, which is when we're going to be the happiest, which means you're going to have a society, you're going to have men and women who somehow have to keep a part of themselves hidden, which is not good for anyone. Right? And then we have stronger workforces. So we just spoke about the gender pay gap, but unless everyone is treated equally, we're going to miss out on the expertise and the gifts that women bring to the table, which means that our companies are not going to do that well, which means that our economy is not going to do that well. And women are going to say, well, you didn't treat me equally, so why should I come and help out? And those who are in the workforce are suffering, right? So having gender equality means stronger workforces, a stronger economy. It also means better government. We've talked about this already, but unless everybody is equally represented in places of power, our government, our laws are always going to leave someone behind. And as long as we're leaving someone behind, at some point, we're going to have to step back because we're not going to be able to progress enough. So gender equality, movements for gender equality, change towards gender equality allows everyone to reach their fullest potential. Avanti, over to you.
Thank you very much, Esther. I hope you can see my screen. Yes. So let's also have a look at, what are ways in which we may be contributing to gender inequality. Our action and speech, as well as our everyday behavior, kind of create certain norms about gender inequality. One form is violence, and let's have this quiz to see which forms of, following examples that you think count for sexual harassment? If you could answer. And it's so good to speak to a very engaging crowd. So let's see, what you think about, what counts as, sexual harassment. Okay, I see answers, especially all of the above. More answers, more people saying yes to that. And yeah, so the right answer is, all of these examples, calling out to a girl on the street. So sexual harassment can occur at different levels. It could occur in public places, in supermarkets and street, and especially in buses, as well as, in workplaces, schools, that you have to be mindful about. And also sometimes we think it's okay to follow a girl on the street, but it's not okay. It can be very intimidating and disturbing to the person's, personal space. So we need to respect that. And also giving a female classmate a backup, these physical forms of, intruding into someone's space, sometimes we think these are friendly gestures, but not necessarily. And they count as, physical forms of, sexual harassment. And let's go into, other ways, that we could contribute to, gender inequality. For instance, stereotypes, there are certain stereotypes, that we develop, over time, in certain societies, communities, as well as, among individuals and at the family level. So let's try to answer this question. Which of the following are jobs that are better for boys and girls? Do we have, kind of an understanding which jobs, that the girls can do better and the boys can do better? Yes, I see more answers, leaning towards anyone can do anything. And yeah, let's see what the right answer is. And so, of course, what we see as, the right answer here is that anyone can do anything. Both girls and boys, men and women, they can do any kind of a job. And sometimes we are used to see like a male politician image, but we should also see more female politicians, like Esther said. And sometimes it's not normal for us to see a woman with a toolkit, as an electrician, but it's totally doable. And, women can also become electricians and chemical engineers. And a lot of the time, we think that women are good for nursing, teaching, caretaking, and domestic work, that kind of, employment opportunities, but not necessarily. Even men can, take up those opportunities. So anyone can do anything. And let's see other forms of, factors that contribute to gender inequality. So shaming and stigmatizing is one component. And let's see, what types of, shaming and stigmatizing that occur at different levels. This applies to both girls and boys as well. So which of the following that you think that the girls should avoid? Should they avoid wearing miniskirts, and should they avoid having boyfriends and staying out late night, or none of the above? So yeah, the right answer is none of the above. It's completely normal, for a girl to wear a miniskirt. And we tend to say that, girls should not wear dresses, that reveal their body. So, but it's about personal choices and, your own preferences that we need to respect. And sometimes we tend to say that, staying out late night is not okay for girls. But what we also need to aim towards is also to create an environment which is safe and which is also secure for a girl to, work out, do night shifts, and also, travel in the night. And having boyfriends is, completely normal. And let's also see, other forms of shaming that occur, at a level, where boys are being limited and also confined. Sometimes, we tend to say that, girls should be behaving in a certain way and the boys should be behaving in a certain way. But if you could take the poll and see which of the following, should boys avoid? Should they should they not stay at home and, look after their kids, attend to household chores? And is it not okay to wear pink, floral shirts for boys? And is, crying in public a bad thing for boys? So yeah, 60 participants are saying 64 that none of the above. Of course, none of the above, because, staying home to look after kids or becoming a house husband and, raising your own kids and attending to your household chores, these are just, normal everyday tasks, that both boys and, girls can totally do. And wearing pink floral shirts, and we always have these stereotypes, around colors that, boys should be wearing these colors and, girls should be wearing these colors. But it's all about, personal preferences, and you should be able to, wear whichever the color that you prefer and you would like to, wear. And sometimes, we also tend to say, that crying in public is not good for a boy, but we are all, it's human to, cry. It's human to let your emotions out, when you maybe, don't do well at an exam, we feel sad. And, when we lose a pet or a relative, family member, it's normal, for any gender, a boy or a girl to, cry and, let your emotions out. So, these are, some of the stereotypes, and shaming and stigmatizing, components that we have in our societies. And let's also see what are the other forms, that sort of, lead to gender inequality. One thing that we also see is, victim blaming. So this is also something I saw in the chat, someone commented saying, victim blaming has become so common. So usually, when someone goes through a bad experience, at distress, what we do is, we try to help them out. But what happens most of the time is also that the victim is blamed. So let's see, let's take an example of, a girl, getting harassed, on the street. And what would people say? If you can take the poll and see, what kind of things, that people would say. So some people say that, a lot of them say that, I'm sorry, that's terrible. I'm here for you. Tell me if I can help. And yes, so the answer is also, the right answer is that we should also be, apologizing the person for the experience that person has gone through, and we also should be able to empathize with that person and, try to help, take that person to necessary medical care or to a police station. But under victim blaming, what we also do is, we try to say things like, try to avoid going after dark, but we should be able to create an environment where everyone can, kind of enjoy their space, and, that they're not only restricted to, daytime activities. And then sometimes, that we say, what were you wearing? Like the mini skirt example, we try to say, because you were wearing a mini skirt, you got raped or you got harassed, which shouldn't be the case. That, you should be able to, choose what you want to wear, but still, feel safe around you. And also sometimes people say you should be going with like a male partner in the family, maybe your father, brother, but we know that, in practical sense, women should have that freedom and the liberty, like you answered in the very first question, that, to travel around. But and we know in a very practical sense that a male, person can't always accompany a girl, and the girls should also be able to, move around and, enjoy their freedom and go to work without being harassed or raped. And let's see other forms of things, that might, kind of block you. So what can you do to promote gender equality as a young person, joining this session? So what change do you want to see? If you could kind of, answer this question, and we could see, what can you do to promote gender equality? There are so many factors, that lead to gender inequality in our societies, but there are also so many positive things that we can do, small things, in your personal space, at the family level, in school, in workplace, certain things that you do can, lead to positive change. Let's look at, a few things that we could do. So people are saying, acceptance and freedom for everyone. And also by giving same rights and encouraging women, and do social media campaigns and helping women, and stop these things, and giving education. Yes, education plays a very important role, especially gender education, and make a website and respect each other and create awareness, of course. And there's also things like encouraging women, of course, and leadership. Of course, we should give more women, opportunities for leadership. Start the change with you. Of course, you can be the agent of the change. And a lot about social media campaigns and websites, of course, and so thank you so much for your responses. And let's see, a few things that we could do in our own spaces. Like, we can support and create safe spaces for people to share their struggles. Like, even in school, your workplace, you can have like a small, discussion, once a week, or, according to your own schedule, to, discuss, what kind of issues that girls go through, whether they want to speak up, and, create a safe space where their confidentiality is also respected, and where they feel like, that they could, share some of their experiences. Maybe they are going through sexual harassment, while taking public transport, maybe even on online spaces. Now everything is converting into online, and they might be getting, different forms of, comments and, messages, to their inboxes. So these are things that you could discuss, and, create a safe space to, discuss, each person's, struggles, and also challenge your own discriminatory views and, stereotypes. If you have certain, discriminatory views, like sometimes we tend to say, especially, that boys' education is more important, and, that we tend to tell your sister that, oh, you don't have to be an engineer, you can get married, once you finish your education. So things like that, that we could change, and, we could kind of avoid saying, so that we create like an equal space for everyone. And also there are sexist views, from peers, and, so these things you can, avoid. When your peers are catcalling a girl, you can, explain why that is wrong, why, power is being used, in certain contexts, and, avoid them from doing these things. And also challenge people and institutions in power when they promote inequality. And there are, certain workplaces, that say that, it's we have a night shift, and, we cannot recruit a woman, but you should also be able to stand your ground and say no. Women can also, do this job, and, kind of support their, upward mobility. And also actively make sure that everything you're a part of, treats everyone equally. So even at school, workplace, you can always, be that agent of, change, and also respect and, celebrate the choices of others, what they wear, what they, choose as a career. We need to respect those choices of people, and also be who you are, celebrate who you are, regardless of your gender, whether you are a man, woman, or a transgender. I think we need to respect who we are. And let's also, have a look at, the He for She campaign a bit, which is also, one of the flagship campaigns of UN Women. that you are aware, and you will also receive a badge, at some point, from the He for She campaign. So He for She is a UN Women Solidarity movement that was built for gender equality with the support of men especially. And initially, if you look at the history, the gender equality and the women's rights movement was, only led by women. But in the recent years, that we also understand that, both men and boys, anyone can be part of this campaign. So that we also need to respect, equality. So if you are a he for she, that you should also be able to believe that gender equality is a human rights issue that affect, all of us. When you provide equal opportunities for women, that we provide equal opportunities for everyone as well. So there are, a lot of celebrities and CEOs and politicians and figures, that have joined this campaign over time and become, flag bearers of, He for She campaign, which is inspiring, and especially to see their stories, how they make a change at their national level, international level, even at the family level, what kind of differences that they make. So Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and the former US President Barack Obama and Prime Minister of Japan, they're some of the He for She, flag bearers for the campaign. And if you are a he for she, and you should speak up against sexual harassment, especially, and make a commitment to end sexual harassment and to call it out when you see it. And it's important, like you said, when you see it, you could fight your battle and then, kind of avoid it. And also share your commitment. If you make a commitment, and you can share a quick video or a photo saying, that I made a commitment to become a he for she, and also invite your friends. It's all about, raising awareness, like you said in the previous question, and then breaking that silence, and also creating a solidarity movement for gender equality. So we would like to end our presentation, but we would like to take questions from you. We have around 5 to 7 minutes, to take questions from the audience, and we would like to hear your questions and, try to answer a few of them. Do we have any questions from the audience? If anyone is willing to send us a question here through the Mentimeter, we would like to take it up. Yes, so we have a few questions here. In your opinion, what will you do when other people disagree on your dream? So that's a good question. In your opinion, especially, that in a context of, where a girl and a boy can get discriminated because you're not allowed to pursue your dream. Of course, you could, tell, why it is important for you to pursue your dream, because your entire future depends on, how far you pursue your dream. And it's really important that, that your family and your teachers and, relatives kind of, let you pursue your dreams. So that's where you feel happy. So you could make a case and see, how to pursue your dream there, and give facts and figures, why it's important for you to get there. How can we change people's perceptions when it is such a hard thing to change besides using education? That's a very good question. People have a lot of perceptions, coming from the society, community. So It's difficult. I think, like you said, education is really important, to start from, grade 1, even maybe at the preschool stage, to change your perceptions. But change can also come within family, making parents understand, some of the struggles and that the girls go through, and, kind of support their dreams. And apart from that, like you said, a lot of campaigns, social media content, especially young people are really capable of, developing a lot of good social media content that we can, take forward, so we can, change these perceptions, at different levels. So we really need to, take this message out in different ways so that we can, make a change.
I'd like to come in and just build off of something Avanti said. Actually, the 2 previous questions. One was how we push to do what we want, and how we spark change. And I think one of the biggest things that can help change is when we actually resist ourselves. When people resist structures, and when we step forward and we do things that we are told we're not supposed to do, it can be incredibly powerful. I mean, if you just look at in the past 10 years, the number of women who have become presidents, right? And the journey, I know I don't want to go into it, but the journey to women becoming presidents or prime ministers is incredibly hard. They are insulted for what they wear, they're insulted for what they say, for how they look, their relationships. It's a hard journey. So if you're struggling, you are in the company of some of the most powerful women in the world. But now that they are in power, it's incredibly inspiring. And people who previously would have said, oh, women might not be the best leaders, will now say, actually, they're doing a really good job. So maybe we should have more women in power. And one of the biggest things you can do to spark change is actually live it. Yeah, that's just my.
I think that's all the time we have left now. Unfortunately, we have to go for our next session. But thank you all both so much for the amazing session. And I think everyone here really enjoyed participating and contributing and actually interacting with us and learning so much more on how important it is to actually understand what gender empowerment is about. Because to us, it is really important that equality is maintained and that we actually are able to engage with one another and understand the feelings of those around us. So thank you, Esther, and thank you, Avanti, for taking us through an amazing session where we were able to learn so much more and able to learn as scouts what we can do to practice some interesting things that we can actually practice in our own community. We have 2 more sessions lined up for our final day, and this is the event code for today's session. Our final 2 sessions, one begins in another 5 minutes, is done by UNICEF, partnered with UNV, about bridging the digital divide in education. And our final session is at 8 p.m. tonight, Sri Lanka time, where we will be discussing about how we will leave no one behind, and how you as scouts can continue on your journey to being partnered with us and to contribute to working with us despite ending our Jamboree tonight. So thank you everyone for joining. We hope you had a good session and you learned a lot. And we hope to see most of you at our next session.